A video on how to replace the rear bogie wheels on a Yamaha Viper, or I'm sure it's similar to a VMAX and the SX and the other triples. So most of the time it's the, you could say, not the middle one, it's not quite in the middle, but it's usually this idle bogie wheel that bearing goes. So the first thing you do is we'll jack it up. You can put get a piece of 2x4 hydraulic jack, and you can jack it up. You only need to jack it up on one side, but make sure you put a 2x4 so the jack doesn't go into the heat exchange. The next thing you can do is right in here, put that in there. You might have to move the track, but that is 14mm deep socket. Take those all the way out. And if you happen to have them take them all the way off, just screw them back on so you don't lose the nut. There's one there, and then there's one there, so you loosen those. Next thing you know, you take this cotter pin out, a pair of pliers, needle nose, take the cotter pin out. This is 19mm, and the other side, use a 17mm. Take this nut off. And then don't take it off all the way, just take it off so it's just about near the end, and you can tap it with a hammer because you're going to be pushing this axle through. And if you get to the point where you can't push it anymore, I use kind of a makeshift drift. You pound it, make sure you don't screw up the threads, and you can pound that through. Since the middle idler wheel, I don't have to push the axle all the way through. I only have to push it about halfway. So once you start pushing it through, this will come off. Because you loosen the tension on these bolts, the track should be flapping pretty much. So you take this off, and then make sure you pay attention to the sequence. There's the wheel, there's a spacer, and then there's a washer. The washer goes on each side of this frame rail. And then there's that. So you just need to take it off, push the axle back just enough to get this wheel out. Then after you get the wheel out, they're mostly plastic wheels. There's going to be a circlip. And you're going to use these. You're going to put it in the two openings of the circlip and squeeze. Try to pull it out. If it doesn't pull out all the way, one side sometimes gets stuck. Get a screwdriver in there just on one side and start to pry it up. Eventually it'll all come out. And if the bearing is stuck, if the bearing is still complete, turn it over and use that drift to pound the bearing out. If the bearing is totally blown out, you can use a screwdriver, a big screwdriver, and pound on the remaining parts of the brace. Put this on two pieces of 2x4, and then you can pound that out. And then to get it back in, this is you just add a little bit of grease. These are not pressed in. You just put the bearing in. Let's see if I got the bearing number. Well, I'll put the bearing number. Oh, there's the bearing number. Let's see. Yes. So this one works. I'm not sure if that's, I don't think it's original Yamaha bearing, but that's the one that goes on all the idle wheels on this thing. So you press that in, you make sure it's flush with this back end, put the C-clip back in, and make sure you grease everything. You might as well, if you want, take the axle almost all the way out, put plenty of grease on it, and then put it back in. And then once you get everything back together, you put this nut on, but don't tighten it all the way because you're going to adjust your track. And then when you adjust your track, you're going to tighten down that nut in there, and you're going to have it so your track, I have it so it's right about in the middle, pushes down about 1 inch. on each side. Make sure you get the same amount of tension. If you want to do it the correct way, there's weights that you can buy, and you let the weights hang off the track. Make sure it's adjusted on both sides. So once you get your adjustment set, then you can tighten your nut all the way down, and there are the torque values. Let's see, C would be the torque value, and then put the cotter pad in, and then you're all set.